The first time Vivian Wallace said my name inside my truck, I knew something was wrong. Not wrong in a loud, dramatic way. Wrong in the quiet way that sticks to your skin and refuses to leave. I was driving her home because her husband told me to. Mr. Wallace does not ask twice. He just says what he needs, and you do it. That is how working for him goes. That night, the desert heat was still hanging around even though the sun was already gone. My old Chevy's AC was barely keeping up, pushing out weak air that smelled like dust and worn leather. Vivian sat in the passenger seat, so quiet I could hear the turn signal clicking, steady and sharp, like a nervous heartbeat. We had not spoken since she got in. Then, without looking at me, she turned her head slightly and spoke so softly it felt like a secret meant only for the truck. "Caleb, take me somewhere private." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. "Private?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I thought I was taking you home." Quote. She stared straight through the windshield like the road ahead was too heavy to look at. "Not his house," she said. "Not tonight." I should have said no right there. I should have taken her straight back to that gated place with perfect hedges and a driveway so clean it looks like no one actually lives there. I sell cars for a living. I am not a hero. I am not a therapist. And I am definitely not the guy who gets involved with his boss's wife. But there was something in her voice. Not drama, not flirting. Pain. Quiet and controlled, like it had been packed down for years. Let me back up. My name is Caleb. I am 30 years old, and I live just outside Phoenix in a small apartment that is more practical than comfortable. I work at a mid-level car dealership. Half the lot is shiny new sedans. The other half is used trucks with too many miles and stories you do not want to hear. The job is not exciting, but it pays the bills. I am good at it because I do not push people. I let them breathe. My boss calls it a calming presence. I call it not wanting to fight anyone. I keep my life simple. Work, home, repeat. I keep people at arm's length because it hurts less that way. A few years ago, I thought I had something real with a woman named Sarah. We were together for 2 years. She wanted a bigger city and a bigger life. I did not. She moved to Denver. I stayed and learned how loud quiet can be. Mr. Wallace runs the dealership like a machine. He is 52, sharp, always in control. He is not cruel, but he is not warm either. When he speaks, people listen. When he looks at you, it feels like he sees what you are trying to hide. I respect him. I also fear him, if I am being honest. His wife, Vivian, has always been a mystery. I had seen her at company parties and charity events. She is 38, always polished, tailored dresses, hair pulled back perfectly. But it was her eyes that stayed with me. Sharp, yes, but sad, like she was smiling for everyone else. We never really talked, just polite nods. That was the line. Boss's wife. Employee. Keep it clean. Then came that Friday evening. The dealership was quiet. I was shutting down my computer when my phone buzzed. "Wallace!" He did not waste words. "Caleb, I need a favor," he said. "I'm stuck in a meeting. Pick up Vivian and drive her home. She's at a coffee shop on 7th Street. My stomach tightened. "Sure," I said, because saying no to Wallace is not really an option. The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and string lights. Through the window, I saw her sitting alone, staring at her phone. She was not dressed like usual. No sleek dress, just a white blouse and jeans. Her hair was down. She looked smaller, more human. She followed me out without a word. In the truck, the silence felt heavy but not awkward, like something unsaid was sitting between us. I told her we would be home in 15 minutes. She did not answer. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers twisting the fabric of her blouse. Then she said it again, quieter this time. "Caleb, can you not take me home?" Quote. I glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "Somewhere with music," she said. "Somewhere with people, anywhere, that isn't his house." Quote. The way she said his made my chest tighten. I should have stopped the truck. I should have reminded her who I worked for. Instead, I swallowed and nodded. "Okay," I said. "I know a place." I turned the wheel away from her neighborhood, and in that moment, everything shifted. I did not know it yet, but that choice would crack open both our lives in ways neither of us were ready for. And as the city lights started to change behind us, Vivian leaned back in her seat, closed her eyes, and whispered my name again. This time, it did not feel like trouble. It felt like the beginning of something I could not undo. The place I took her was not fancy. It was an old lounge bar called the Desert Note, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop on the edge of Phoenix. It was the kind of place people went when they did not want to be seen, but did not want to be alone either. I had been there a few times after Sarah left, when silence felt heavier than noise. Vivian did not say a word during the drive. I kept the radio off. The hum of the engine filled the space between us. Her perfume mixed with the worn leather of my seats, light and clean, and it made me too aware of how close she was. I told myself to focus on the road. When we pulled into the gravel lot, the neon sign flickered red above the door. Vivian stared at it like she was stepping into another version of her life. "You sure?" I asked, holding the door open for her. She nodded once. "I'm sure." Inside, the lighting was low and warm. The air smelled like cedar and whiskey. Soft jazz drifted through the room. People sat in quiet clusters, talking low, like everyone had agreed to keep their secrets small and contained. We took a table in the corner, hidden just enough to feel separate. Vivian exhaled as soon as she sat down, like she had been holding her breath all night. When the waitress came by, Vivian ordered red wine without even looking at the menu. I ordered a non-alcoholic beer because I did not trust my judgment anymore. She wrapped her fingers around the wine glass and stared into it like it held memories instead of liquid. "You know," she said finally, her voice barely louder than the music, "I used to teach piano." I blinked. "You did?" She smiled, but it was fragile. "Before I married Wallace." The image did not fit what I thought I knew about her. Vivian Wallace, the polished woman from company events, sitting in a quiet room teaching piano. It made something shift in me. "Why'd you stop?" I asked. Her smile faded. She took a sip of wine. "Wallace said it was a distraction, said the sound gave him headaches, so I sold the piano." 8 years of silence packed into one sentence. She looked at me then, really looked at me. The sharpness in her eyes softened, replaced by something tired and honest. "Do you ever feel," she asked, "like you're living someone else's life?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The question landed too close to home. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "Caleb, let's go somewhere more private." For a second, I thought I misheard her. We were already tucked into the darkest corner of the bar. No one was paying attention to us. "More private?" I asked. "Vivian, this is pretty private." She shook her head. "Not like that." My chest loosened a little, but not all the way. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I want to say things out loud," she said. "Things I can't say in that house. Things I can't say to him." I hesitated. "We can talk here." She shook her head again. "Here, I still feel watched. Not by these people. By him. By who I'm supposed to be." I did not know what to say. I was not used to anyone opening up to me like this, especially not someone like her. "What would feel private enough?" I asked. She glanced toward the stage, then back at me. "Your truck," she said, "just park somewhere quiet. No music, no strangers." That should have been my line. That should have been where I stopped everything. Instead, I nodded. "Okay," I said, "just for a bit." We left the bar and stepped into the cooler desert air. I drove to a small overlook near a park where the city lights spread out below us like scattered stars. I parked under a buzzing streetlight and turned off the engine. The silence rushed in. Vivian leaned her head back against the seat. "This," she said, "this is what I needed." I stared through the windshield. "Tell me," I said, "what you can't say at home." She laughed softly, without humor. "Where do I start?" She spoke slowly, like the words had been waiting a long time. "I used to have a life," she said, "not just events and dinners and looking perfect. I used to matter. You matter now, I said without thinking. She turned toward me. Do I, or do I just look good next to him? The question hit hard. I don't think you're decoration, I said, but I can tell you feel like you are. Her fingers twisted in her lap. He's not cruel, she said. Not obviously, he just decides everything. And I go along with it. I knew that control. I lived under it every day at work. Why tonight? I asked. Why me? She swallowed. Because you're safe. Safe. The word landed strange. You listen, she said. You don't look at me like I'm a prize. I laughed quietly. I listen because I know what it feels like to be alone. Her eyes softened. Sarah, she said. I blinked. How do you know about Sarah? I heard Wallace mention it once, she said. He said you don't bring drama. I let out a humorless breath. I just hide it well. Silence settled again, full but not heavy. Then her phone buzzed in her lap. She looked down. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Wallace. She did not answer. The phone buzzed again. If I pick up, she whispered, he'll know. She turned the phone face down. I just need 1 more hour, she said. 1 hour where I can breathe. I nodded slowly. Okay, 1 hour. She exhaled like she had been waiting to hear that. Neither of us knew yet that this hour would cost us far more than time. The hour passed slower than I expected. Not because we were talking nonstop, but because every word felt heavy, like it mattered. The city lights stayed spread out in front of us, calm and distant, like another world that did not know we were sitting there, holding our lives open. Vivian leaned back in her seat, staring at the glow outside the windshield. I used to play a piece when I couldn't sleep, she said quietly. What piece? I asked. Claire de Lune, she replied. It always made things feel softer. I nodded. It sounds like a secret, I said. The kind you don't tell anyone. She smiled faintly. Exactly. Her phone stayed silent for a few minutes. Then it buzzed again. She flinched this time, like her body reacted before her mind could. You don't have to ignore it forever, I said gently. I know, she replied. I'm just not ready to go back yet. I looked at her, really looked. She was not trying to be dramatic. She was exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. Vivian, I said carefully, I can't fix this for you. I know, she whispered. I'm not asking you to. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. I just need someone to see me, just for tonight. The honesty in her voice pulled something loose inside me. I had spent years pretending I did not need that from anyone. I see you, I said quietly. She turned toward me, eyes shining under the streetlight. For a moment, the air felt charged, like something dangerous and delicate at the same time. She leaned closer, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel her breath. If I go back tonight, she said, I disappear again. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed hard against the seat. She looked down. Wallace. She stared at the screen, then flipped the phone face down again. He doesn't care where I am, she said. He cares about control. I swallowed. Then maybe we should take you home, not because you want to, but because I need to protect you. And myself. She looked at me, searching. You would do that. I have to, I said. If he starts asking questions, I need to tell the truth. She nodded slowly. Okay. I drove her back to the gated house and parked in the driveway. The place looked perfect and empty, like a show home. You can sit a minute, I said. She did, staring at the door like it might swallow her. Thank you, she said, for not making me feel crazy. You're not crazy, I replied. You're tired. She got out and walked toward the house. I waited until the door closed before driving away. I told myself that was it. It was not. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It's Vivian. Thank you for last night. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Any time? I typed, then hesitated before sending it. The rest of the week, I buried myself in work. Wallace did not mention the favor. He just watched me a little closer than usual. Then Vivian texted again. Coffee. Camelback Road. Noon. I knew I should say no, I did not. At the coffee shop, She looked different, simpler, tired but real. "I left the house," she said quietly, "just for a few days." My heart thudded. "Are you okay?" "I think so," she said. "I want my life back." We met again after that. Short walks, quiet lunches. Nothing that looked wrong from the outside, but everything felt dangerous. Then, one Monday morning, Wallace called me into his office. "I know about the bar," he said calmly. "And the meetings." My stomach dropped. "You're a good salesman," he continued. "Don't throw that away." Quote. The warning sat heavy in the air. That night, I stared at my phone, torn between fear and honesty. Vivian had texted, "You okay?" I took a deep breath and typed back, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Her reply came fast. Yes. I did not know it yet, but the choice I made next would cost me my job and change my life forever. We met the next day at the same coffee shop on Camelback Road. It felt safer somehow, being in daylight, surrounded by people who had no idea our lives were quietly unraveling. Vivian was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with both hands wrapped around her cup. The moment she saw my face, she knew. "He talked to you," she said softly. I nodded and sat across from her. "He knows," I admitted, "about the bar, about us meeting." She exhaled slowly, like she had expected it. "Of course he does. He watches everything." I leaned forward. "Vivian, I need to be honest. I can't do this the wrong way. I can't be your secret. I won't be the thing he points to and says you were the problem." Her eyes stayed on mine. "I never wanted that," she said. "I never wanted to drag you into this." "I walked into it," I said. "I chose it the moment I turned my truck away from your house." She looked down at her coffee. "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying I care," I said. "But I'm also saying I'm done living scared." Her breath caught. "Caleb, I mean it," I continued. "I've been hiding for years. I told myself I was fine with small and safe. I wasn't. I was just afraid." She reached across the table and brushed her fingers against mine. The touch was light, but it felt final. "I'm trying to leave," she said. "I really am. I'm staying with a friend. I'm applying to teach piano again." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. She gave a small, surprised smile. "You sound proud." "I am," I said. "You're choosing yourself." The coffee shop buzzed around us, normal life moving on while ours shifted. Then she leaned in slightly. "He didn't fight me leaving," she said, "but he's going to fight me being free." "You'll need support," I said. "Real support." She studied me. "And you? What do you need?" Quote, "The question caught me off guard. No one asks me that anymore. I need to stop hiding," I said. "I need to stop living my life for other people." She nodded slowly. "Then don't let me be the reason you stay stuck." I took a breath. "I'm leaving the dealership." Her eyes widened. "Caleb, you don't have to do that." "I do," I said. "I can't work for a man who controls people like that." A week later, I handed in my resignation. Wallace did not argue. He just watched me from his office window as I walked off the lot for the last time. I took a job at a smaller dealership across town. Less money, more peace. Vivian kept moving forward too. She started teaching piano again at a community center. She sent me a short video of a kid playing badly and smiling big. Her laugh in the background sounded lighter than I had ever heard it. For a while, it felt like we were both rebuilding. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. It was Wallace. "We need to talk," the message read. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, knowing some endings do not arrive all at once. They come quietly, asking for one last conversation before everything changes. I did not reply to Wallace right away. I sat on the edge of my couch, phone in my hand, feeling that old pressure creep back into my chest. The kind that makes you feel small, even when you are doing nothing wrong. Vivian called before I could decide what to say. "He reached out to you," she said. It was not a question. "Yeah," I replied. Said we need to talk. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear traffic in the background, voices passing by wherever she was. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never wanted this to land on you." "I know," I said, "and I don't regret it." That surprised me when I said it out loud. It was the truth. "Are you scared?" she asked. I thought about it. "Yeah," I admitted, but not enough to go back. We met that evening at a small park near the community center where she taught. The sun was low, painting everything gold and soft. Vivian sat on a bench, hands folded, her posture tense but steady. "He's filing for divorce," she said quietly. I sat beside her. "How do you feel?" She let out a breath, relieved and terrified at the same time. "That makes sense," I said. "He told me I was making a mistake," she continued, "that I'd regret giving up security for uncertainty." I looked at her. "Do you believe him?" She shook her head. "No, for the first time, I don't." She turned toward me. "What did he say to you?" "That I'd lose more than I'd gain," I said, "but I think I already lost enough staying quiet." She smiled at that, small but real. The next day, I met Wallace at a quiet restaurant near his office. He was calm, controlled, the same man I had worked for all those years. "You made a choice," he said after we sat down. "Choices have consequences." "I know," I replied. He studied me like a puzzle. "You think you saved her?" "I never tried to," I said. "She saved herself." That was the last real conversation we ever had. Weeks passed. Life slowed into something steadier. Vivian moved into a small apartment of her own. I helped her carry boxes up the stairs. Nothing dramatic. Just normal. One night, after a long day, she played piano for me at the community center. Just the two of us. Soft, imperfect, beautiful. "This is who I am," she said when she finished. I believed her. Then, standing there in the quiet room, she looked at me and asked the question that made my heart stop. "What are we doing, Caleb?" I took her hands, feeling the weight of everything we had survived. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I want to find out." Together. She smiled through tears. "Me too," she said. Outside, the desert night stretched wide and open. And for the first time in my life, the future did not feel like a threat. It felt like a chance. The night after she asked that question, I did not sleep much. Not because I was afraid of what might go wrong, but because for the first time in years, I was letting myself imagine what could go right. A few weeks later, life settled into something quieter. Not easy, not perfect, just honest. Vivian's apartment was small, second floor, with a balcony that faced a row of palm trees and a busy street. It was nothing like the house she left behind. No gate, no security, no silence that pressed down on you. The first time I stepped inside, there were boxes everywhere, and a piano keyboard leaning against the wall, still in its case. "I'll get a real one again someday," she said, almost shy. "For now, this feels like enough." "It's more than enough," I told her. She started teaching full-time at the community center. Kids, adults, beginners who laughed at their mistakes. She came home tired in a good way, fingers sore, smile real. Sometimes she talked about her students like they were miracles. Sometimes she was quiet, sitting on the balcony with a cup of tea, just breathing. The divorce was not dramatic. Wallace kept it clean and controlled, just like everything else in his life. Papers signed, assets divided. No apologies, no closure. Vivian said that part hurt more than any argument would have. "One day," she said, "I realized I stopped waiting for him to understand me." That was the day she finally felt free. As for me, the new dealership felt strange at first. Fewer suits, more dust. But the people laughed easier. No one watched you like you were a problem waiting to happen. I came home tired but lighter. One evening, I picked Vivian up after her last class. The sun was setting, the sky painted in deep orange and soft purple. She got in my truck, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, chalk dust on her fingers from the old piano keys. "Drive," she said, smiling. "No plans." So I did. We left the city behind, windows down, warm desert air rushing in. The radio stayed off. We did not need it. After a while, I pulled over near a quiet stretch of road where the city lights faded into darkness. We sat there, watching the stars slowly appear. "You know," she said, "the first night in your truck, I was terrified." "I was too," I admitted. She laughed softly. I wasn't asking you to save me. I didn't even know what I was asking for. I think you were asking to be seen, I said. She nodded. And you saw me. She turned toward me then, really turned, and rested her hand over mine. There was no rush in the moment, no pressure, just two people choosing to stay. I don't know where this goes, she said. I don't either, I replied, but I know I don't want to go back to who I was before. She smiled at that, a real smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. We did not kiss right away. We just sat there, hands together, the desert quiet around us. For once, the silence felt kind. Later, when I dropped her off, she leaned in and kissed my cheek, light and warm. Thank you, she whispered, for driving that night. I watched her walk up the stairs to her apartment, turn once, and wave. As I drove away, I realized something that surprised me. I was not afraid anymore. Not of losing a job. Not of wanting something real. Not of the road ahead. Because sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one quiet moment, one honest choice, and the courage to turn the wheel in a different direction. And this time, I was finally driving my own life.